The major case I'm discussing today is the most sensational family massacre case of the early this century. The male protagonist in the case was the former executive vice chairman of the board of directors of a well-known media organization in Hong Kong. He was considered a wealthy man of that era, usually low-key and cautious, yet his meticulous planning failed to account for his girlfriend's actions on the card table. This oversight bridged two different social strata that should never have intersected, ultimately bringing about the annihilation of his entire family. On May 29, 2004, after being unable to contact his boss, Zhou Yin Nan, for 3 days, an employee felt something was wrong. The boss's mobile phone was constantly switched off, and the home landline was emitting a fault signal. So the employee decided to go to the boss's home in Futian district, Shenzhen, to check the situation. The Zhou family lived on the ground floor, and there was a foul, putrid smell wafting from the doorway. No one answered the door despite repeated knocking. But the observant employee noticed that the boss's car was still in the parking lot, although covered in a thick layer of dust. Thinking this was suspicious, he gained permission from the community security guard and climbed through the window to check the room. Unexpectedly, the floor was covered in blood, a sight too horrible to behold. Frightened, he immediately called the police. When Shenzhen police arrived at the scene, they discovered that Zhou Yin Nan, his lover Xiang Yong Jing, her 4-year-old daughter, along with the accountant Dong Jinjiang and the 16-year-old nanny Lin Jing, had all been murdered in the home. Zhou Yin Nan's credit cards and all valuables in the house had been stolen. The Trust Garden community where he lived was considered a high-end residential area at the time. In 1998, he had bought the 150 square meter apartment for 1.2 million yuan, only 200 meters from the Futian District Committee. Across the street was Shenzhen's sub-central area, which housed a group of early wealthy residents. Back then, they had little concept of mortgages, and almost all bought their homes outright. Zhou Yin Nan, who usually appeared reserved, was very low-key. He dressed simply, never wore gold or silver, and chose inexpensive barbershops. The neighbors didn't even know his real name, as Xiang Yong Jing had introduced her 50-something husband to others as Mr. Huang. Zhou Yin Nan's identity was thus largely unknown. Many people began to suspect that this might not be a simple case of home invasion and robbery. Since even the 4-year-old girl was not spared, it looked more like a revenge killing. So who could harbor such deep hatred for him to exterminate his entire family? First, let us get to know Zhou Yin Nan. Zhou Yin Nan was a man who took things in stride. It's hard to say whether he created his wealth or if wealth chose him. In 1983, after graduating from the Beijing University of Postal and Telecommunications, he was assigned to the production section of the CCTV advertising department. In those years, the field was not very promising. Later, due to a surge in advertising volume, Zhou Yin Nan, who was hardworking and reliable, was promoted to assistant department head and then deputy head. However, even in a high position, he remained cautious. Thanks to his easygoing personality, he never made mistakes in the complex divisions and balances within the advertising industry. Reliable and reassuring were the deepest impressions many colleagues had of him. Zhou Yin Nan once told an impatient colleague, "You should slow down by 2 beats when doing things. Wait a little. Some urgent matters might just take a turn for the better." This offers a glimpse into Zhou Yin Nan's calm demeanor. In 1986, through an introduction, he met and married a nurse named Zhao from the Beijing Obstetrics and Gynecology Hospital. His wife was not fond of dressing up, but very cheerful. Different from Zhou Yin Nan's taciturn nature, his wife preferred to communicate and chat with people. In 1990, to expand the overseas market, CCTV advertising department selected Zhou Yin Nan to go to Hong Kong. He himself might not have been motivated to fight for this opportunity, but his non-contention inadvertently benefited him. In 1993, Zhou Yin Nan joined Huaying International, a subsidiary of CCTV. Along with the previous Zhongguo International, he was responsible for both institutions. However, for him, the work in Hong Kong and Beijing was not much different. During this period, he commuted back and forth between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. In 1996, when Phoenix TV was launched, Huaying International held 10% of its shares, making Zhou Yin Nan the executive vice chairman of the media organization. Through a coincidence of fate, he attained such a staggering and prominent position. The real turning point for Zhou Yin Nan occurred in 1999. In this year, the 10% Phoenix shares held by Huaying International were transferred to BOC International, and he thus withdrew from Phoenix TV. The agency relationship of Huaying International, which had represented CCTV network advertising for 7 years, also ended. Before the tragic incident, Zhou Yin Nan lived on the first floor of the Xingtu Huayuan residential complex. This 150 square meter apartment was purchased in 1998 for 1.2 million yuan. He also owned 2 luxury cars, a BMW and a Mercedes. Not long before the murder, Zhou Yin Nan had complained to friends that his business was increasingly difficult. He was preparing to sell his house and cars to move to Beijing for development. Xiang Yong Jing, the woman who perished with Zhou Yin Nan, was named Xiang Yong Jing, 21 years his junior, born in 1976, making her 28 at the time. She hailed from Hongya County, Meishan City, Sichuan. Xiang Yong Jing had 1 elder brother and 2 elder sisters. Her life could be described as quite challenging. At the age of 3, her mother suddenly died at home. Neighbors suspected it was due to domestic violence leading to death, and her father was once detained for 3 years on this charge, later released due to lack of evidence. Xiang Yong Jing dropped out of school in the 5th grade of primary school and started working in factories early on. She worked in clothing factories, canning factories, and small handicraft workshops. At 17, after graduating from junior high, she left home for work, wandering through many places like Chengdu, Beijing, and Shenzhen. Later, she settled down at a club in Beijing. Young and beautiful, Xiang Yong Jing soon became acquainted with Zhou Yin Nan. At this time, Zhou Yin Nan was a high-level manager in the CCTV advertising department, often bringing clients to the entertainment club. The two became close from then on. In 1997, Xiang Yong Jing returned to visit her hometown. She was 21 years old, gorgeously dressed, wearing expensive jewelry, which especially attracted the attention of everyone in the village. Many people wondered how she had suddenly become so wealthy. However, Xiang Yong Jing and Zhou Yin Nan were not together at that time. It wasn't until 2 years later, in 1999, that she married Yang Ven, an employee of the Supply and Marketing Cooperative, and gave birth to a daughter. But this marriage did not last long. They divorced in 2001. About a year after the divorce, in 2002, Xiang Yong Jing and Zhou Yin Nan registered their marriage at the Civil Affairs Bureau of Hongya County, Sichuan, and obtained a marriage certificate. Subsequently, Zhou Yin Nan purchased a 146 square meter apartment with a garage in Gansheng Huayuan, Chengdu, with cash. After renovations, Xiang Yong Jing and her daughter moved in. Xiang Yong Jing had a beautiful appearance and knew how to dress, plus Zhou Yin Nan was also generous with spending, so whenever she appeared in the residential area, she stood out. Guards and neighbors clearly remembered her, saying her demeanor was completely different from others. Zhou Yin Nan even went specifically to a notary office in Sichuan province to have a notarized deed of transfer of the house to Xiang Yong Jing's name, gifted under the guise of husband and wife. At that time, Xiang Yong Jing did not need to work. Her daily routine was just dropping off and picking up her daughter from kindergarten. In her free time, she often went to clubs to play Mahjong. Before the Lunar New Year of 2004, she told her Mahjong friends that she was preparing to move to Shenzhen. Then she moved into the apartment in the Xingtu Huayuan complex in Shenzhen with her daughter to live with Zhou Yin Nan. However, immediately after the case occurred, the appearance of another woman made this relationship complicated and mysterious. A nurse named Mrs. Zhao stepped forward, claiming she was Zhou Yin Nan's legal wife. Mrs. Zhao's assertion completely contradicted the information that those around Zhou Yin Nan knew, that he was single. Perhaps this could also explain why Xiang Yong Jing hid Zhou Yin Nan's real name from the neighbors. Mrs. Zhao's appearance also made the police begin to realize that while Zhou Yin Nan seemed reserved on the surface, his romantic and marital relationships were much more complex. Deng Zhenjiang, 60 years old, an accountant at Zhou Yin Nan's advertising company. Because he returned from a business trip that day, he was temporarily staying at his boss's company, Unexpectedly, he met with a terrifying disaster overnight. Lin Zheng, 16 years old, the maid, the only one unrelated by blood or kinship to the victims. She usually took care of household chores and looked after Xiang Yong Jing's 4-year-old daughter, Yang Shiyi. At this point, the identities of all the victims were clearly established. The police began to retrieve surveillance footage from the residential area, interview neighbors, and gather information about the victims' social relationships. Simultaneously, they shifted their attention to all the people the victims had recently been in close contact with. During this process, one name began to appear repeatedly: Yuan Cui, a woman who frequently entered and exited the Shenzhen complex and had a close relationship with the victims. Yuan Cui was born in 1972 from Wufeng Tujia Autonomous County, Hubei. Like Xiang Yong Jing, her family was very poor. Because of her poor academic performance, after graduating from junior high, she did not continue her studies but went to Guangdong in the south, hoping to change her fate by working as a laborer. But the reality was harsh. Without a diploma or a profession, she encountered difficulties everywhere. To make a living, Yuan Cui eventually chose the path of prostitution. In 1995, Yuan Cui met a Hong Kong man named Yuan Cui. Mr. Huang began to support her, but this relationship was not very stable. Sometimes, Yuan Cui even refused to provide living expenses. This Yuan Cui operated a tea house called Yuelai, located not far from the Shenzhen complex, just a short walk away. This tea house was opened by Yuan Cui and another Hong Kong man, and that Hong Kong man also had a mistress named Xiaoyang, who was a fellow villager of Xiang Yong Jing. Xiang Yong Jing loved playing Mahjong, and often went to the Yuelai tea house to find Xiaoyang for a game. Yuan Cui also often visited the tea house to play. Xiaoyang then introduced Xiang Yong Jing to Yuan Cui. The three women quickly became close. Yuan Cui discovered that Xiang Yong Jing was not only a regular customer, but also her neighbor. Therefore, in addition to being Mahjong friends, the two often went shopping and got beauty treatments together. Sometimes, when Xiang Yong Jing was busy playing Mahjong, she would leave her daughter for Yuan Cui to look after so she could play with peace of mind. According to the tea house staff, Xiang Yong Jing was generous, spoke frankly, and often boasted in the shop about what new gift her husband, Zhou Yin Nan, had just given her, or how much money he had invested and earned. Sometimes she would lose thousands of yuan playing Mahjong without even flinching. So how did the police come to suspect Yuan Cui? It turned out that as early as May 30th, the day after the case occurred, the Shenzhen Municipal Police Bureau dispatched forensic technical personnel to the scene for investigation. The police noticed a woman in her early 30s frequently appearing below the building where the crime occurred with a panicked expression. This attracted the attention of the police officers. She seemed to be rubbernecking, but did not look like an ordinary neighbor. The police decisively brought her back to the police station for questioning, and this woman was none other than Yuan Cui. After more than 10 hours of interrogation, Yuan Cui, with her poor psychological resilience, finally spoke. She confessed that the case was committed by her fellow villagers. However, Yuan Cui insisted that she did not participate, saying that her fellow villagers saw Xiang Yong Jing had money and wanted to commit a robbery, which resulted in the murder. Yuan Cui even provided their contact information. Thus, the police followed the clues to track them down. In less than 30 hours, all the suspects were identified in extremely high efficiency. These individuals included Lo Jun, 30 years old; Zhang Tao, 29 years old, just released from prison on May 1st after serving 12 years for robbery; Hu Gong, 28 years old, sentenced to 5 years and 6 months in prison for robbery in 1996, released in 2001; Zhang An, 21 years old, from Gong'an County, Hubei. Except for Zhang An, Lo Jun, Zhang Tao, and Hu Gong were all Yuan Cui's fellow villagers from Wufeng Tujia Autonomous County, Hubei. So how did these people come to be connected to Xiang Yong Jing? The root of all this still came from Yuan Cui. As the two associated more, Yuan Cui discovered that although both were kept mistresses, the difference compared to Xiang Yong Jing was significant. Xiang Yong Jing not only had a house in Chengdu, but also lived like a wealthy madam in Shenzhen. Zhou Yin Nan gave her whatever she wanted. The house not only had a maid, but also had a ready BMW and Mercedes. As for Yuan Cui, Yuan Cui was often missing and did not provide living expenses. She could only earn money by introducing women to others to cover her daily expenses. Although the two had similar backgrounds, their fates were worlds apart. This stark contrast made the dissatisfaction in Yuan Cui's heart grow, and her admiration gradually turned into uncontrollable jealousy.
At that time, Yuan Cui had cut off Wu Yunxi's living expenses for several months. This made Wu Yuntai extremely angry. She already resented this man, thinking it would be better to teach him a painful lesson. So she sought out Lu Jun, her cousin's friend. Lu Jun was also facing difficulties at the time. He had previously embezzled sales money from his company, so he was hiding in Shenzhen, not daring to show his face, without money and without a way out. As soon as Wu Yunchun mentioned a money-making opportunity, Lu Jun immediately agreed. Unfortunately, Yuan Cui, whom they had been following for a long time, offered no opportunity to strike. After several failures, Lu Jun proactively asked Wu Yuntai, "Don't you have other wealthy friends? How about changing the target?" Hearing this, Wu Yunchan immediately thought of her close friend, Xiang Yong Jing, who often played Mahjong with her. One day in early May 2004, Wu Yunchan invited two of her sisters to Xiang Yong Jing's house to play Mahjong. While they were playing, one Mahjong friend left early. Wu Yunchan immediately called Lu Jun and told him to come to make up the numbers. She pretended to say, "If it's inconvenient, never mind." In reality, she wanted Lu Jun to survey the area. Lu Jun arrived at the Sinto Huaiwan complex and saw Xiang Yong Jing for the first time. He also took the opportunity to survey the entire surrounding area of the house. He found that Xiang Yong Jing's house was on the first floor. The windows were not fitted with anti-theft bars, and entry and exit were extremely easy. Malicious intent immediately arose in his heart. Not long after, Lu Jun returned to his home in Hunan for a trip. About a few weeks later, Wu Yunchan called and said she had chosen a date, feeling it was a good time to act. Lu Jun received the call and began to recruit accomplices. He first went to Juzhou to buy 4 knives, then sought out his old partner, Zhang Tao. Zhang Tao had previously served 12 years in prison for robbery and had just been released not long ago. The two discussed and then used QQ to call up 2 more acquaintances of Zhang Tao, Chang An and Hu Gang. On May 23rd, the 4 people arrived in Shenzhen to start planning the detailed action. During the conversation, Zhang Tao did not hold back and said bluntly, "If we rob more than 1 million yuan, why not kill everyone to avoid future trouble?" Although Lu Jun and the others did not reply, their silence was a clear tacit agreement. On May 26th, this horrific 5-person murder case began its countdown. That day, Wu Yunchan and Lu Jun called each other many times, constantly confirming the details of the crime. In the morning of the same day, Xiang Yong Jing called Wu Yunchan to go grocery shopping together and said she would take her daughter to the hospital afterwards. Only the young maid Lin Jing was left at home, and Zhou Yin Nan was away at work. Around 4 p.m., Lu Jun called Xiang Yong Jing's house. He pretended to be a friend of Mrs. Xiang, saying he wanted to deliver a few boxes of mineral water. The maid, Lin Jing, completely unsuspecting, opened the door for Lu Jun and Zhang Tao to enter the house. As Lin Jing turned around to pour water, Zhang Tao immediately pulled out a knife and held it to her neck from behind. The two tied her up and sealed her mouth with adhesive tape. They then opened the door for Chang An and Hu Gang, who had received a message and rushed into the house. Lu Jun quietly left to stand guard at the gate of the residential complex. The 3 inside began to wait patiently for the Xiang Yong Jing family to return. While bored, they even turned on the TV to watch for a while. Around 5 p.m., Xiang Yong Jing returned home with her 4-year-old daughter, Yang Shi. As soon as they stepped through the door, the mother and daughter were immediately subdued. By 7 p.m., the homeowner Zhou Yin Nan returned home from work and was also restrained by the knife-wielding thugs. From the 3 victims, they searched and found a total of several thousand yuan in cash and some valuable jewelry, along with a few bank cards. Initially, Xiang Yong Jing deliberately gave a false password. After learning it was a false password, the group became very angry. Zhang Tao forced Mrs. Xiang to confess, and he used torture on Mrs. Xiang to obtain the correct password.
At around 9 p.m., Lo Jun successfully withdrew 5,000 yuan from Xiang Yong Jing's card. After that, he ran to find Wu Yuanshui again. By 11 p.m. that night, Deng Chenjiang, who was staying overnight, also returned. Initially, the three robbers were about to clean up the crime scene, but unexpectedly, someone returned. Zhang Tao and Zhang An tried to subdue Deng Chenjiang, but he resisted fiercely. The two robbers joined forces to pin him to the ground, punching and kicking him, then striking him hard on the neck with an iron hammer. Deng Chenjiang immediately became motionless on the spot. They continued to search and unexpectedly found an additional 10,000 yuan in cash and 2 bank cards in the safe. Lo Jun received the notification and quickly rushed back to the ATM, and this time he found an astonishing figure in the back. Zhou Yin Nan's account had more than 6 million yuan. He was so excited that he immediately called Zhang Tao to inform him. At this time, Zhang Tao brought up the issue of the maid, Lin Jing. He said that Lin Jing had seen Lo Jun. What if they didn't kill her and she exposed them later? He suggested, since we've started, let's finish the job. Kill everyone to avoid future trouble. Lo Jun nodded, and Zhang Tao immediately made arrangements. He and Zhang An together used a hammer and a knife to kill Zhou Yin Nan. Zhang An went to deal with Lin Jing, and Hu Gong strangled Xiang Yong Jing. And the most brutal scene was at the very end. Initially, the thugs intended to spare the 4-year-old girl Yang Shiyi, as she was small and posed no threat. Both Lo Jun and Wu Yuanshui said don't touch the child, but Zhang Tao objected, saying that since they were already 4 people, no one could be left alive. Finally, he personally used a strip of cloth to savagely strangle Yang Shiyi. When everyone was dead, the 3 robbers tore the tape off the victims' mouths, put the knives, adhesive tape, and all the tools into a black backpack, and fled the scene at 3 a.m. Around 6 a.m., they threw the backpack into a nearby river. Wu Yuanshui shared the spoils with the others. She first withdrew 50,000 yuan in cash from Xiang Yong Jing's card, and also used the credit card to buy gold and silver jewelry, a camcorder, and other luxury items. The total value was over 600,000 yuan. Zhang Tao was responsible for managing all the cards and passwords. On May 28th and 29th, he withdrew cash multiple times. A few days later, Lo Jun called his fellow villager Shi Zhaozheng to his house to help him withdraw money from the bank cards. Shi Zhaozheng knew it was stolen, but still helped Lo Jun withdraw 50,000 yuan and took 10,000 yuan as a reward. Lo Jun also gave one of Xiang Yong Jing's bank cards to Shi Zhaozheng. He withdrew another 6,000 yuan from it. At this point, the group began to scatter and flee. Wu Yuanshui fled to Dongguan, hiding in the home of her fellow villager Wang Ba. Wang Ba knew she was in trouble, so he hurriedly took her to a relative's place. During this time, he even took her to a pawn shop to sell the stolen goods, but was unsuccessful.
From intention to criminal action took less than a month, and the fate of this family of 5 was completely ruined. However, sometimes it might indeed be divine will. Wu Yuanshui, who should have escaped, secretly returned to the scene on May 30th to check. Perhaps she was worried about whether everything had been exposed. And this action of returning to the scene raised the suspicion of the police, allowing the case to be quickly solved in just 30 hours. After the police arrested these culprits, the case quickly entered the trial stage. In addition, Wang Ba, who had helped Wu Yuanshui escape, was also held accountable. During the trial, the 4, Lu Jun, Zhang Tao, Zhang An, and Hu Gong, quickly pleaded guilty, admitting to all acts of participating in the robbery and murder. However, Wu Yuanshui consistently refused to admit that she had participated in the planning. She insisted that she did not plan it, nor did she actively provide information about Xiang Yong Jing's family. However, the prosecutor did not believe her words. When the trial took place, the police presented a call recording, proving that Wu Yuanshui had contacted Lu Jun multiple times on the day the crime occurred, May 26, 2004, and all were at important moments before and after the case. Faced with this direct evidence, Wu Yuanshui suddenly changed her statement, saying that she was threatened by Lu Jun and forced to cooperate. They told her to call to exploit information and point out the target. She was afraid, so she helped. After the case occurred, she was afraid of being silenced, so she fled to Dongguan to hide. However, the prosecutor immediately questioned, "You said you were worried about your own safety, so why did you still have the presence of mind to use the victim's credit card to shop?" At this point, Wu Yuanshui was completely speechless. Finally, the court concluded that the 5 defendants, with the intention of robbery and murder, broke into the house, stole property, and brutally murdered 5 people, including a child. The circumstances were extremely serious, the level of danger was immense, and severe punishment was necessary. On November 26, 2004, after the Guangdong Provincial High People's Court approved the death sentence, the Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court legally executed Wu Yuanshu, Lu Jun, Zhang Dao, Zhang An, and Hu Gong. After the case was solved, Xiang Yong Jing's father stepped forward and demanded 1 million yuan in compensation from the 5 main perpetrators. Unfortunately, these culprits were all penniless, all desperately poor, and none had the ability to compensate. Mr. Xiang's father then sued the residential complex management company, demanding similar compensation. The reason was that the management company had not fully fulfilled its safety obligations, but the court ruled that the responsibility was not established and rejected this request. Although the case was closed and the murderers paid for their crimes, the massive assets under Zhou Yin Nan's name sparked a protracted inheritance dispute.